In this video, we're going to be drawing Super Saiyan 4 Goku.
That attack should have reduced him to ashes.
My powers have far surpassed yours, Tuffle, and you know it. Now you've got to deal with me.
Good times. Good times. In my opinion, Super Saiyan 4 Goku was the best part of Dragon Ball GT. And if I'm being completely honest, probably its only redeeming factor. Now Dragon Ball Legends has recreated Super Saiyan 4 Goku's artwork in all of its glory, so of course we've got to draw it. This is our source image we're going to be working with today. I'm going to be honest with you, we're probably not going to color it. First of all, I don't have the correct markers. Second of all, I'm too cheap to get them. And also, I think this would look pretty damn good in black and white. So for a list of the materials we're going to be using today, take a look at the description below. But basically, we're going to be using a 9x12 piece of drawing paper. I'll be using Strathmore Bristol paper. And we're going to be subdividing the paper into sections of 3x3 inches, and that's to make it a little bit easier for you guys to follow along. And we'll be starting in that top center cube right over there. Alright, that's all you need to know, so let's go ahead and get started with the drawing process. Okay, so we're going to start off here with an oval. And to help define the oval, I'm going to draw two dots, one at the bottom, one at the top. And you can actually go ahead and use these crosshairs I've created to give you a better idea of where the oval is going to be in the cube. Honestly, sketching this oval is probably going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the hardest part of the entire tutorial. It's a little sad, but it's true. Okay, so now let's go ahead and draw this line through the middle of his face. And we're going to draw two additional lines. And this first line is going to define his eyes, and the second one is going to define his mouth. Okay, let's draw the outside of his face. The first part is going to follow the same path as his eyes, that line that we created. And the rest of the face is actually going to follow the same path as that oval. And all the way down to the chin. Now for the actual face, let's go ahead and start with the crease between his eyes, then his eyebrows. And we don't have a whole lot of real estate to work with here, but we're going to try and squeeze in his eye. And I kind of messed up on the pupil there, but I'll go back and fix that later. No big deal for now. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. First the eyebrow, then we'll draw the eye. And we're actually going to have to draw two lines for this eye. The other one as well, but it's not really visible. And erase there to kind of clean things up a little bit. Okay, so far so good. So next, let's go ahead and work on his nose. We're going to start at the bottom of the crease between his eyes and work all the way out to the edge of the oval that we started with, to the outside of his face. And you can see his eyebrow sort of forms a C shape with his nose. So for the mouth, we'll start just below his nose and we'll go all the way outside to the just below his pupil. And actually I made it a little bit outside his pupil there, so it's a bit too wide, his mouth. So we'll go ahead and fix that later on once we start working on the details. You can kind of consider this the rough draft. So I'm drawing the jawline there, and that's actually unnecessary because we'll be, it's going to be invisible, his jawline. We're going to be drawing the hair over it. But I'm drawing the jawline to help me find the position for his ears. And we'll draw a few extra details before we start working on his hairline. So the first hair is actually going to go just outside of his right eye. We're going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. So the first one is going to be 7 lines. The second hair is going to be just one big line to start off with, but it's not going to be straight. 2, 3, 4. So this one's going to be just 5 lines. And we're going to repeat kind of the same process with the rest of his hairs. They kind of look, yeah, for the most part, they're kind of straight, I guess. But they're always going to have a slight curve to it. So we're going to draw the hairs closest to his face first. And then later on, we'll go back and we'll start drawing the hairs on top of his head. Now that we've drawn his hair, we won't be needing the jawline, so we can go ahead and get rid of it here. And before we move on to drawing the rest of his hair, let's go ahead and define his shoulder. And we're going to start right up against that jawline that we just erased. And it's going to be a pretty big round circle. And we're not going to worry about the rest of his arm for now because we still have to finish up his hair. But as soon as we're done with the top of his hair, we'll go ahead and move on to the rest of his body. I have to keep repositioning my chair to draw from different angles because I have my paper taped down to the table. But of course, for you, it's going to be much easier to just move the paper around. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and redefine these lines a bit to make them easier to see, and I'll be right back. So far looking pretty good. I actually forgot to add a few details to his face, so we'll go ahead and do that right now. Oh, and off camera, I slightly shifted his pupils over to the right, which basically took it from him looking straight forward to looking towards us. Kind of wish I recorded that, but no big deal. For his arms, we'll start by sketching a few general shapes and lines before we start drawing the larger muscle groups. You'll see I drew that elbow very close to the bottom corner of the square. I'd say about 3, maybe 4/5 of the way down towards the bottom. Now let's go ahead and start defining some of his muscles. Most of these changes are going to be to the bottom of his arm. For the most part, the top of his arm is going to follow the same shape as that oval that we created. Drawing the hands is usually the hardest part of any drawing. Here, I didn't have much trouble with his bottom hand, but I struggled quite a bit with his top hand. So I'm kind of going around in circles here trying to fix this, but eventually I just kind of give up and just leave it for later, basically. Cool, so his chest is going to be very easy, very simple, and it's not going to take up a whole lot of real estate. And now we can finally move on to his torso and his belt line. We're just going to define some of the larger lines for his legs here, and then we're going to go back to finishing up his belt and his torso and adding a few more details there before we go back to finishing his legs. Okay, so you can sort of see the outlines of the legs there. I do this all the time. I start drawing and I forget to hit record. And this time, all I was doing was repositioning the camera. But I gotta erase it and redraw it, obviously, so you can see the drawing process. So don't worry about the finer details for now. We're just gonna concern ourselves with the main form of his legs and only draw some of the larger creases and folds. You can see already that his face looks a little too big and his waist is a bit too thin. This is all stuff that we can go back and fix. We call these corrections, but I'm gonna save all that for the end or else it's gonna interrupt the drawing process. So one last thing we need to draw is his tail. Just a few points here. Make sure it's not too skinny or too thick. Make sure it's not too small. I don't know. It's a tail, dude. It's not that hard. The lines that I'm drawing do look a little bit straight. They don't look to be too rounded, but I think it adds a nice little effect to it. In this case, I probably wouldn't round it off too much. So the left side of the tail is going to be most of the work. Sorry, that's the right side. The left side of the tail is going to be very easy, actually. We're just drawing the tip of it over there. And that's it. We're done. Before we continue, let me actually show you something. So this one on the left here is my practice run, and this is the one that I recorded. So my practice run actually looks much better than the one I recorded. I think the biggest problem is I messed up on his right eye. I made it a bit too wide, and it kind of shifted everything off balance. So during the process, when I'm putting the details in towards the end, I might decide to fix that, but it depends on how good the shading ends up looking. If it looks fine after I shade it, then I'll probably just leave it alone.